To address this effectively, we need to look at the multifaceted nature of the problem, the human and systemic causes, and the potential paths forward that require a shift in individual, political, and corporate behavior. The scale and scope of the climate crisis. The planet's climate has been relatively stable for thousands of years, allowing human civilizations to flourish in a predictable environment. However, in the last century, human activity, primarily the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, has dramatically altered the Earth's atmosphere, leading to unprecedented changes. We are now experiencing the consequences of these actions in real time: extreme weather events, rising sea levels, melting ice caps, and shifting ecosystems. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, reports that if global warming exceeds 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the impacts on the planet will be severe and potentially irreversible. The repercussions of even a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase include higher risks of drought, heat waves, heavy precipitation, and sea level rise, all of which threaten human and ecological systems. However, we are currently on a trajectory for a rise of approximately 2.7 degrees Celsius by 2100 if we continue at our current rate of emissions. This path would spell catastrophic effects, far beyond our current experiences with natural disasters, and create unprecedented pressures on social, economic, and political systems. The impacts of climate change, more than just rising temperatures. Climate change affects everything: resources, migration, human health, and global stability. Extreme weather events. We are already witnessing an uptick in the frequency and severity of extreme weather events like hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and droughts. These events are not only deadly but also financially draining, costing billions of dollars in damages annually. Communities affected by such disasters face a lengthy and costly rebuilding process, sometimes without the guarantee of long-term resilience. Rising sea levels and coastal flooding. Higher global temperatures lead to the melting of polar ice caps and glaciers, which, in turn, cause sea levels to rise. Low-lying coastal regions, home to millions of people, are at significant risk. Cities such as Miami, Mumbai, and Jakarta are grappling with the possibility of being submerged in the coming decades, creating waves of climate refugees and leading to intensified competition for safe living spaces. Agricultural disruptions in food security. Changing climate patterns alter rainfall patterns and temperature ranges, impacting crop yields and livestock health. With the global population expected to reach 10 billion by 2050, food security will become an even more pressing issue. Unpredictable growing seasons, the spread of pests, and the loss of arable land could lead to famines and social unrest if preventive measures are not taken. Health crises. Climate change exacerbates health issues, from heat-related illnesses to the spread of infectious diseases. As temperatures rise, so does the prevalence of heat waves, which can be deadly, particularly for vulnerable populations. Additionally, as climate zones shift, vector-borne diseases like malaria and dengue fever are expanding into new areas, placing unprepared populations at risk. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. The rapid pace of climate change is causing ecosystems to destabilize. The accelerated loss of biodiversity endangers food chains, weakens resilience to environmental changes, and diminishes natural resources. Every year, species go extinct at alarming rates, which not only impacts the environment but also eliminates potential resources for medicine, agriculture, and industry. The systemic causes, beyond individual actions. While individual actions like reducing plastic use or recycling are often promoted, the climate crisis has roots in systemic issues. The fossil fuel industry, industrial agriculture, and unsustainable consumer practices are primary contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. Without addressing these structural problems, individual actions can only go so far. Fossil fuel dependency. Fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, account for the vast majority of carbon emissions. Major corporations in the fossil fuel sector, alongside governments that support their operations, bear significant responsibility. Despite knowing the environmental risks for decades, many companies continue to prioritize profits over the planet, even funding misinformation campaigns to downplay the crisis. Corporate influence in policy. Corporate lobbying has delayed meaningful climate action. Many large companies, particularly in fossil fuels, agriculture, and manufacturing, wield influence over policymakers to ensure that their industries are regulated as lightly as possible, thereby preserving their profits. Weak environmental policies and insufficient regulation make it difficult to curb emissions on a large scale. Economic systems and unsustainable growth. Capitalism, in its current form, relies on continuous growth, often disregarding the environmental cost. The focus on short-term profit can lead companies to exploit resources unsustainably, with little regard for long-term consequences. Addressing climate change may require rethinking economic growth and adopting models like a circular economy, where resources are reused and waste is minimized. Political inertia and short-term thinking. Political leaders often operate within election cycles, focusing on immediate issues that will win them support rather than long-term challenges. Climate action, which requires immediate investment and long-term commitment, is frequently sidelined in favor of policies that provide quick economic boosts or appease powerful industry lobbies. The path forward: mitigation, adaptation, and transformation. Effective climate action must occur on multiple levels: mitigation to reduce emissions, adaptation to deal with inevitable climate impacts, and transformation of our socio-economic systems to support sustainable practices. Renewable energy transition. A shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power is essential. Countries like Germany and Denmark have made significant strides, showing that a renewable transition is possible without economic collapse. Investments in green infrastructure not only reduce emissions but also create jobs and boost the economy. Reforestation and land restoration. Forests act as carbon sinks, absorbing CO and helping regulate the climate. Reforestation and afforestation projects, alongside the protection of existing forests, are vital for offsetting emissions. Additionally, restoring degraded lands can improve biodiversity and contribute to climate resilience. Sustainable agriculture. Agricultural practices must evolve to reduce their environmental impact. Methods like agroforestry, permaculture, and regenerative agriculture can restore soil health, reduce emissions, and create more resilient food systems. Reducing food waste and shifting dietary habits, especially decreasing meat consumption, can also alleviate pressure on the environment. Policy and regulation. Governments must implement and enforce strict environmental regulations. Carbon taxes, cap-and-trade systems, and subsidies for clean energy are policy options that can incentivize businesses and individuals to reduce emissions. International agreements like the Paris Accord set global targets, but enforcement and accountability remain critical. Education and awareness. Raising public awareness about climate change and its impacts encourages people to advocate for meaningful change. Education systems must incorporate climate science into their curricula to prepare the next generation for the challenges ahead. Climate justice. Climate change disproportionately affects marginalized communities, both within and between countries. Climate justice emphasizes that those who have contributed least to the problem are often most affected. Efforts to combat climate change must be equitable, ensuring that vulnerable populations have the resources to adapt and thrive in a changing world. Conclusion. The time for action is now. The climate crisis represents an existential threat to humanity, but it is also a call to action, a challenge for innovation, collaboration, and courage. Solutions exist, but they require collective commitment and structural change. Individuals, corporations, and governments each have a role to play in creating a sustainable future. If we continue on our current path, we are heading toward a future of uncertainty and instability. However, if we choose to act now, we can mitigate the worst effects of climate change and build a world that values ecological balance, human health, and social equity. The choices we make today will shape the world for generations to come, and the urgency to act has never been greater.